Welcome to Secret of Murder, where we explore the dark side of human nature and stories that shock communities around the world. I am your host, and today we are diving deep into the case that rooked the USA community in Toronto to Canada. If you are new here, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, because we upload new true crime content every day. Trust me, you would not miss what unfolds in this story. So make sure you match until the very end. Raghav and Meera seemed like the perfect farming couple, respected in their village and bound by tradition. But behind closed doors, Meera's secret affair with a younger man would turn Valentine's Day into a deadly betrayal that shocked everyone. In a remote farming village of northern India, life unfolded at a slow rhythm. The rising sun brought farmers into their fields, women to their kitchens, and children to the dusty lanes where they played freely. Life appeared simple, untouched by the chaos of cities. The villagers trusted each other, sharing seeds, tools, and even grief when misfortune struck. Everyone knew everyone's business, or at least they thought they did. Beneath this calm surface, human desires and dark intentions often remained hidden, waiting for the right moment to surface. Among the many homes scattered across the village was one that stood out for its modest prosperity. It belonged to Raghav, a hardworking farmer who had inherited land from his father. His family was considered fortunate, as his fields produced enough to feed them and sell at the local market. Neighbors respected him for his honesty and his commitment to hard work. His wife Meera, soft-spoken and graceful, was admired for her devotion to household duties. To outsiders, their lives seemed like an example of stability and tradition. But this quiet village was a place where appearances mattered more than reality. People smiled in public, but whispered in private. Rumors about small quarrels or secret dealings traveled faster than the monsoon winds. It was a community where everyone's eyes were on one another, but not every truth was visible. Within the walls of Raghav's home, cracks were beginning to form, though no one yet noticed them. Behind Meera's composed expression and gentle demeanor, feelings of loneliness were quietly growing. The village, wrapped in the illusion of peace, had no idea that it was about to become the backdrop of a story that would shake every household and leave scars for years to come. Raghav's life had always followed a path drawn out for him long before he could make choices of his own. He grew up learning the values of discipline, labor, and tradition. When he reached the right age, his parents arranged his marriage to Meera, a young woman from a nearby village. The match was considered suitable by both families. She was dutiful, modest, and capable of running a household. For Raghav, it was not about love, but about responsibility. Marriage was a step in life, just like plowing the fields or sowing the seeds, and he accepted it without question. From the first day in their home, Meera slipped into her role with quiet obedience. She cooked, cleaned, and cared for the children that came along in the years that followed. She wore the appearance of a traditional wife who never raised her voice and never asked for more than what was given. The neighbors admired her for this, often saying Raghav was blessed with a good wife. Yet the truth inside their house was different. There were no shared smiles, no long conversations, no warmth beyond what duty required. Raghav loved his farm more than he loved the idea of companionship. His mornings began before sunrise, and his evenings ended in exhaustion. Meera, on the other hand, spent her days in silence, tending to chores and watching life slip by without affection or attention. She never complained, but the emptiness grew heavier with every season. What looked like a strong marriage from the outside was, in reality, little more than a partnership built on tradition. And while Raghav seemed content with this arrangement, Meera's heart quietly longed for something more, something she could not yet admit even to herself. Meera's days often felt endless, filled with the same repeated tasks: sweeping the courtyard, cooking meals, drawing water, and tending to the children. Yet, as time passed, she began to feel a hollow ache inside her, a sense that her life was moving forward but leaving her behind. Raghav's attention was fixed entirely on the fields, the harvests, and the livestock. He rarely asked about her feelings or even noticed when her face carried the weight of sadness. The silence between them grew louder than any words could have. It was during her routine visits to the bustling village market that Meera's life took an unexpected turn. The market was the one place where her world expanded beyond the walls of her home. The smell of spices, the chatter of vendors, and the noise of bargaining customers created an escape from the quietness of her days. Among the crowds, she first saw Arjun. He was younger, confident, and carried himself with an ease that made him stand out from the rest. Unlike Raghav's serious and distant nature, Arjun had a spark in his eyes that drew her attention almost instantly. At first, their interactions were nothing more than polite exchanges, a glance, a brief smile, a casual word. But with every trip to the market, Meera felt herself looking for him, waiting for that moment when their eyes might meet again. She began to dress with more care before leaving home, something she had stopped doing years ago. Though no one else noticed, inside her a dangerous shift was happening. The loneliness she had carried for so long started to turn into a longing, and that longing soon gave birth to desire, a desire that would change her life forever. What began as harmless glances soon grew into a secret that neither Meera nor Arjun could resist. Their meetings at the market turned longer, their conversations more daring. Arjun, with his boldness and easy charm, offered everything that Meera's life lacked: attention, warmth, and the feeling of being desired. For the first time in years, she felt noticed, as though someone truly saw her beyond her duties as a wife and mother. What started as chance encounters quickly shifted into planned moments, each one pulling her deeper into forbidden territory. They began meeting at the edge of the fields, far from the eyes of villagers. Sometimes it was in the cover of the trees, other times in an abandoned hut once used for storing grain. Each stolen moment filled Meera with a mix of excitement and fear. The thrill of secrecy was intoxicating, but it also carried the heavy shadow of danger. She knew what would happen if anyone discovered them: shame for her family, disgrace for herself, and ruin for Arjun. Still, the risk only seemed to heighten the passion that grew between them. Soon, their affair turned from simple attraction into an all-consuming obsession. Meera found herself waiting impatiently for Raghav to leave for the fields so she could think of Arjun freely. At night, lying beside her husband, her thoughts wandered to her lover. Arjun, too, grew restless, no longer satisfied with fleeting encounters. He began pressing her to imagine a future together, one without Raghav standing in their way. The whispers of love slowly transformed into whispers of desperation, and those whispers hinted at a darker solution that neither of them had dared to speak aloud, yet both secretly considered. As February approached, the village prepared for its usual rhythm of celebrations. Though Valentine's Day was not a festival most villagers openly acknowledged. For Meera, however, the date carried a different weight. Arjun had begun insisting that she make a choice between him and Raghav. He painted visions of a life where they could be together without hiding, free from shame and secrecy. Each time he spoke, Meera's fear clashed with her desire. She knew that leaving Raghav openly was impossible. Tradition and family honor would never allow it. The only path forward seemed to be the most dangerous one. The idea of removing Raghav started as a fleeting thought, quickly dismissed as impossible. But Arjun's persistence, combined with Meera's growing desperation, gave the thought strength. They both knew that Raghav's trust in her was absolute. He never questioned the meals she prepared or the care she provided. In that trust lay the key to their plan. Meera would prepare his favorite sweet dish, milk pudding flavored with cardamom, something he loved and never refused. But this time, hidden within its creamy texture, would be a deadly dose of poison. She purchased pesticide under the excuse of protecting their crops, careful to act casual as she handed the shopkeeper the coins. The bottle, small yet powerful, was hidden away in a corner of the kitchen. On the morning of Valentine's Day, her hands trembled as she measured the poison, stirring it into the dish while glancing at the door to make sure no one entered. By the time Raghav returned from the fields, exhausted and hungry, the meal was waiting for him. To him, it was a gesture of affection. To her, it was the beginning of an irreversible end. That evening, the house carried an unusual sense of calm. The children played quietly in the courtyard while Raghav sat down to the meal Meera had carefully prepared. The aroma of the sweet pudding filled the room, and he accepted the bowl with a faint smile of gratitude, unaware of what it contained. He ate heartily, savoring the taste, never once suspecting that the very hands serving him had mixed death into his food. For Meera, every bite he took felt like a pounding heartbeat inside her chest. She forced herself to look calm, but her mind swirled with fear and anticipation. As night settled, the first signs appeared. Raghav clutched his stomach, his face twisting in sudden pain. At first, he thought it might be indigestion from a long day's work, but the cramps worsened quickly. His body weakened, sweat dripped down his forehead, and he stumbled as he tried to call for help. The children grew frightened, and Meera played her part, rushing to his side, pretending to be shocked at his suffering. Neighbors were called, and panic spread through the house. By midnight, Raghav's condition had deteriorated beyond saving. His body convulsed, his breathing grew shallow, and the pain became unbearable. The family's cries echoed through the night, but nothing could stop the poison's grip. Just before dawn, he took his final breath, leaving silence in the room where moments before there had been chaos. The village mourned deeply the next morning. People gathered at the house, offering condolences, speaking of how hard-working and honest Raghav had been. Meera wept alongside them, her tears convincing and her grief seemingly real. Yet behind the veil of sorrow, she felt a dangerous mixture of relief and dread, knowing the secret she carried within her heart. In the weeks following Raghav's death, the village remained enveloped in mourning. Friends, relatives, and neighbors came to pay their respects, praising Raghav for his honesty, hard work, and quiet strength. Meera maintained a role of the grieving widow flawlessly, her face streaked with tears, her hands trembling as she accepted condolences. To the outside world, she was the picture of sorrow, a woman broken by the sudden loss of her husband. Yet, beneath that carefully crafted mask, her mind was far from quiet. As the days passed, subtle cracks in her performance began to appear, though few noticed them immediately. She smiled too easily at small jokes, lingered longer than necessary with certain villagers, and carried herself with a confidence that seemed unusual for a woman in mourning. Some neighbors whispered, though discreetly, questioning why she appeared almost lighter, as if a heavy burden had lifted. Others dismissed it, blaming it on coping mechanisms or the relief of finally being free from a long, distant marriage. Her interactions with Arjun, though still cautious, grew more visible. Small gestures, a shared look, a passing touch began to draw attention. While they were careful to avoid the most obvious signs of intimacy, the sharp eyes of the village could still detect something unusual. Rumors, the lifeblood of small communities, began to spread quietly. People started asking questions behind closed doors, noting her behavior and the frequency of Arjun's visits. The combination of her apparent cheerfulness and Arjun's audacity sowed seeds of doubt. Villagers who had once believed in her innocence began to wonder whether the tragedy had been entirely natural. Meera's careful balance of grief and desire was precarious, and the tension of maintaining her secret while living under the gaze of neighbors was slowly building toward a breaking point. The mask she wore so convincingly was beginning to slip, and with it, her freedom hung in the balance. Among the villagers, there was one woman who had always watched Raghav's household more closely than others. Savita, a neighbor who had long admired the late farmer for his honesty and kindness, noticed things that others overlooked. She recalled seeing Meera purchase a small bottle from the market just days before Raghav's death, under the pretense of tending to the crops. Something about the timing and the secrecy of the purchase unsettled her, though she kept the suspicion to herself at first, unsure whether it was just a fleeting worry or a sign of something more sinister. As the weeks passed, Savita's unease grew. She remembered the subtle changes in Meera's behavior, the faint smirk she tried to hide when villagers' eyes wandered, the way she lingered near Arjun whenever possible, and the strange relief she seemed to carry alongside her grief. Each observation added weight to the suspicion that had begun to form in Savita's mind. The villagers, mourning the loss of a respected man, were blind to these details, too caught up in their own grief and in offering condolences to notice anything unusual. Eventually, Savita decided she could no longer remain silent. She approached the local authorities quietly, sharing her observations and suspicions. The officials, initially skeptical, decided to reopen the investigation, considering the peculiar circumstances and the timing of Meera's purchase. They began gathering evidence, examining the bottle of pesticide, questioning vendors, and retracing the days leading up to Raghav's death. What seemed like a natural illness was now under scrutiny. Each step of the investigation brought the hidden truth closer to light, and Meera's carefully constructed story of grief began to unravel. The community that had blindly mourned a loss was about to discover that betrayal had lived quietly among them, hidden behind the most unsuspecting of faces. The investigation quickly uncovered evidence that shattered the illusion of a natural death. Toxicology reports confirmed the presence of poison in Raghav's body, a fact that sent shockwaves through the local authorities. The pesticide Meera had purchased days before his death was traced back to her, leaving little doubt about the source. The meticulous way she had mixed it into the sweet pudding, her calm demeanor while serving it, and the timing of the attack all pointed to premeditation. What had seemed like a tragic but ordinary loss was now revealed to be a carefully planned murder. As police dug deeper, Meera's secret affair with Arjun came to light. Witnesses came forward, recalling seeing the two together in ways that had seemed harmless at the time, but now carried a sinister implication. Letters and notes exchanged between them were discovered, filled with veiled promises of a life together and discussions that hinted at eliminating Raghav as an obstacle. The picture that emerged was chilling. A woman consumed by desire, a lover pushing for dangerous solutions, and a husband unsuspecting until his final moments. The village, once convinced of Meera's innocence, began to murmur with suspicion and disbelief. People who had visited the household to offer condolences now questioned every detail they had once accepted without doubt. Her reputation, built over years of careful appearances, crumbled almost overnight. Authorities confronted Meera with the evidence, and her initial attempts to lie or mislead investigators quickly fell apart. Each revelation added to the weight of her guilt. The affair, the poison, the careful planning, all were undeniable. What had begun as whispers of suspicion had transformed into a full picture of betrayal and murder, and the truth could no longer be hidden. The quiet village, once cloaked in routine and trust, was now forced to face the shocking reality of what had truly occurred behind closed doors. The arrest of Meera and Arjun sent shockwaves through the village. The quiet streets that had once carried only the sounds of daily life now buzzed with gossip and disbelief. Neighbors who had praised Meera's devotion and mourned Raghav's death were stunned to learn that the woman they trusted had plotted his murder. Arjun, once admired for his confidence and charm, was revealed to be the manipulative force driving the affair and the deadly plan. Together, they had shattered the illusion of normalcy that the community had relied upon. The trial that followed became a spectacle, drawing attention from nearby towns as details emerged. Evidence was overwhelming. The pesticide bottle traced to Meera, toxicology reports proving the poisoning, letters exchanged between her and Arjun, and witnesses who had seen the clandestine meetings. The prosecution painted a picture of calculated betrayal, showing how desire and obsession had led Meera to commit the unthinkable. Defense lawyers tried to argue temporary weakness or coercion, but the sequence of events left little room for doubt. Throughout the proceedings, Meera and Arjun maintained composure, but every piece of evidence tightened the noose around them. The judge, after considering the deliberate planning and cold execution of the crime, delivered life sentences to both. The villagers, who had once whispered in private suspicion, now faced the reality of justice being served. In the aftermath, The village struggled to reconcile the tragedy with the people they thought they knew. Valentine's Day, a symbol of love and devotion elsewhere, would forever be remembered as the day a devoted farmer lost his life to betrayal. Meera and Arjun's story became a cautionary tale, whispered from one household to the next, a chilling reminder that desire, when twisted by greed and secrecy, can destroy even the most ordinary lives. The memory of Raghav lingered, a silent witness to the deadly consequences of hidden passions.